Your cult boyfriend here talking about Frank Capra. Two films actually. 1933's Lady for a Day and 1961's Pocketful of Miracles. Um, he remade his own film. It's not the only time he did it. He did it again with Broadway Bill, but this is the more fruitful remake. And it's an interesting facet of Capra's catalog because, as I've said on this channel, I believe that with It Happened One Night started the greatest run of films, the greatest string of films that we had ever seen in the history of fucking filmdom. Like, It Happened One Night in 1934 kicked off what I believe is the greatest string of masterpieces, just constantly one after the other. It was insane. Um, and that's 1934. And Lady for a Day is 1933 for those who are extremely good at math. Um, so it's like right before he really had it. It's right before he was a master. And Lady for a Day, 1933, is just so frustratingly close to masterful that it's insane. You know, other early Capra films don't come as close as Lady for a Day came to masterful, like Bitter Tea of General Yen and God, American Madness. They don't come that close. They didn't come as close as Lady for a Day did, mostly due to Riskin, because that was Riskin's collaboration with Capra, which would go on to be so fruitful and like It Happened One Night and You Can't Take It With You, go on to be so incredible. Riskin was an intelligent and extremely good screenwriter, and the pairing between Capra and Riskin was legendary, one for the ages. Uh, May Robson played Apple Annie in the original, and she's an old school, legendary vaudeville stage actress. She's great. She's superb in it. A lot of pathos there. And in 1933, a story like this, a kind of Cinderella story for an aging, withering senior woman, um, really spoke to the depression of the times, the Great Depression of the times, the financial insecurities, in a lot of cases, the abject poverty that a lot of the people in the audience who were watching Lady for a Day were experiencing. And it allowed them to, like the title implies, be a lady for a day, be successful for a day, have status for a day. Because curiously, neither the 1933 version or the 1961 version ends with Apple Annie coming clean and telling the truth about how she is a beggar, a panhandler, at least a very poor person of extremely low social status, nearly what very proper the rich elite would consider as social outcasts, most likely. Neither version has her come clean. In fact, the fantasy is kept intact, and that's I think a pretty daringly Capra-esque thing for Capra to do. The fantasy is kept intact. The lie is not just noble; it's transcendental and it's fairy tale like, but a tangible one, a sentimental one that you can actually feel because all of Frank Capra's sentimentality has a very true texture to it, and you can feel the heart and the pathos and the passion and the truly like American purity inside of each one. And Lady for a Day and Pocketful of Miracles, that's no different. Glenda Farrell is also very good in Lady for a Day. I wanted to say that. It's good. It's a good film. It's so frustratingly close to masterful. It's insane. But it's not until It Happened One Night that Capra would something would click in his head, the gears would truly start turning, and the man became the greatest director that ever lived right there and didn't stop. Everything after It Happened One Night is pretty great up until he semi-retired, um, and came back for two final films, A Hole in the Head and Pocketful of Miracles. I think Hole in the Head is slightly better than Pocketful of Miracles, but I think Pocketful of Miracles is a better film than Lady for a Day. Now, Lady for a Day, I think, is more socially significant. I think it's more cinematically important because it registered so much with an impoverished audience. Like, it was very important at the time. In 1961, this story wasn't necessarily important to tell to the public then, but it was important for Capra to try to. I think it's a very personal film for him, and it's actually a film that in Capra's catalog that is truly uniquely about failure. I mean, the sentimentality comes across. Betty Davis is excellent, though not as good as May Robson, so that's something in Lady for a Day's corner, but Betty Davis is great. Um, it has Betty Davis and Glenn Ford and Peter Falk, who is probably the secret weapon of the remake. One of the best things about it is Peter Falk. Critics of the time even said that Peter Falk nearly runs away with the film every time he's on screen because he's that great. And he always had great things to say about Capra. And I'm sure that Cassavetes, John, loved talking to Peter Falk about Capra because of how much John admired Capra. So that's really cool that the Cassavetes crew all admired and loved Capra. And Falk said that Capra treated actors with respect, with dignity, and with creativity, and a bit of agency as well. So that's cool. That's very cool. We also have like Capra regulars, like Thomas Mitchell, who I love, and it's also Thomas Mitchell's final film. Thomas Mitchell is one of our least respected but most accomplished and most interesting character actors. Thomas Mitchell is great, and also Edward Everett Horton, another Capra regular in here, who's also extremely good. He's always funny. He's always good. But Pocketful of Miracles, I think, is secretly about failure because I think it's about Capra going back to not just the well, but the biblical well for Capra, like the that oozy well, the well with of all creation came forth for Capra, and since he was someone who spoke very hyperbolically, I'm sure he would agree with me. You know, that primordial ooze was Lady for a Day, because I'm like, you can trace a lot of Capra's further material from Lady for a Day, even though Lady for a Day wasn't a masterful film. It still is a truly Capra-esque film before that term was had any flavor or character to it. Lady for a Day, you watch it and you're like, yes, this is what Frank Capra means. And I think that Pocketful of Miracles is Capra returning to that innocent place of 1933 for him, when the future just seemed so open and he was so ambitious and so in love with the medium and with one man, one film, with his auteur style of filmmaking. And he tried to go back there and instead of rekindle something in the audience like he would normally do, light a fire, a very human fire inside an audience, or rekindle one. I think he was trying to reignite something within himself. Because he had fallen out of love with film. He had claimed that the industry had changed. Like on A Hole in the Head, he was saying how stars have like too much in import, producers have way too much import, and Frank Sinatra had more pull on A Hole in the Head than Frank Capra did, and he thought that was just a betrayal of film itself. And Pocketful of Miracles, sadly, is about failure because it just doubled down. It just proved to Frank Capra once and for all that the film industry he fell in love with, the filmmaking that he fell in love with, was dead and gone. Glenn Ford ran this production. Glenn Ford ran it as if he were the director, honestly. And Frank Capra suffered from my God, the most painful migraines in the world working on this film, from all of the stress, from feeling like he was losing it all. But the thing about Pocketful of Miracles is that it's wonderfully composed, and that compared to Lady for a Day, Pocketful of Miracles is a wonderfully fleshed out version. It's a great late career film. It's also not a masterpiece, but even more frustratingly close than Lady for a Day. But what keeps Pocketful of Miracles is just wonderfully composed. The color is extraordinary. Glenn Ford is excellent. Peter Falk is excellent. Betty Davis is very good in the film. Hope Lang is extremely cute and great in the film. Ann-Margret too. The thing that keeps it apart from it is that you can sense that Capra's trying to feel cinematically alive again, but he just can't. because things aren't the same. His American invention has continued to innovate without him. And certain things about Capra seem particularly passe in 1961. 1933 is a different time, and certain things are not eternal, or at least certain things are. While certain things are eternal, people can be eternally stubborn about cinematically eternal things. And in the early 60s, or the 60s was a very transformative time in general for world cinema, including American. Um, People were eternally stubborn about eternally cinematic films. A Pocketful of Miracles is lovely, and I do really like the fable of it. I love the morality of it. It's one of Capra's not really gray area morality tales. It's just fascinating that like the Glenn Ford character, the character who's trying to give this old panhandler a Cinderella style makeover, is like a criminal himself, or at least occupies the gray area of society, which in 1933 I think is more defensible, or at least very easy to champion, because in 1933 general public were like, well, yeah, of course he's a bootlegger, what else is he gonna do? Probably every option has been closed to him. You know what, it's good to see one of us kind of making it good and then giving back at the same time, you know, keeping on to his morality, even though we occupies a gray zone that we really don't know a whole lot about, but we know it's gray. We know it's not on the up and up. You know, we know it's not that great. And in 1933, I think "Lady for a Day" meant a lot more to a lot more kinds of people, and a lot of different kinds of ways. But "Pocketful of Miracles," there's just something that is so unique about it. You know, I think it's more valuable personally, at least. I think "Lady for a Day" feels like an artifact, whereas "Pocketful of Miracles," you can see Frank Capra surrender. You can feel Frank Capra go, "This isn't for me anymore." I can give you that sentimental fairy tale. I can give you that wish fulfillment. I can give it to you. And everyone else's wishes, they can be fulfilled except for me, Frank Capra. I wish that film would always have a place for me, but it doesn't seem like it does anymore. Not in 1961, and then he quit. Then he stopped making film. Pocketful of Miracles is remarkable because it's a swan song. It's a final curtain. Capra goes out with dignity, even though the industry itself has become undignified. He commands the camera, he commands the frame, he composes the films wonderfully. But the film industry itself is in a constant state of decomposition, and he no longer has a place within it. Even in this place called America that he invented, for someone who had been so known for his patriotism. I mean, God, a lot of stuff happened to Frank. Um, that made him have to second guess his country at times. The House Un-American Activities Commission, they thought he was a communist. They almost accused him of it. Hell, he was violently, or at least passionately opposed to the Vietnam War. His American invention and film that he was a part of from its like American introduction, both those things had left him behind. And that's the tragedy of Pocketful of Miracles. The tragedy was that film doesn't have a place for miracles anymore. Even though parts of Pocketful of Miracles are downright miraculous. It's a very good movie. Hope you enjoyed my review of these two films. Yeah, side by side, Pocketful of Miracles would be my go-to. I think it's more purely enjoyable, mostly before Peter Falk and Glenn Ford and Thomas Mitchell. But Lady for a Day is more socially significant for catering to the kinds of idealistic nomads and vagrants that it was kind of catering to. The fulfilling those wishes, I think, are a lot more important than fulfilling the wishes of a kind of complacent early 60s. But I prefer Pocketful of Miracles because I also think it has that duality, like the dual purpose of capturing a Frank Capra who gives up, who gives it up, the mantle, one of the most important men of American cinema, on his final reel before he walks away.